It's like 8 or 11.
Anything is great.
Good afternoon, everybody.
That stuff was really.
Good afternoon. This is the Town of Dewey Beach Town Council Workshop. It's being held at Dewey Beach Life Saving Station as well as via Zoom. Today is Friday, January 24th, 2025, and it is 3 o'clock. With that, I'd like to open the meeting and convene the Town Council Workshop. Let's please start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second item is the roll call. Commissioner Bauer.
Present.
Commissioner Jazinski. Here. Commissioner Gibbings.
Here.
Commissioner Persinger.
Here.
And Mayor Bill Stevens is also here, so they're all present. We also have members of the Finance Committee here present, as well as from Town Hall. The focus of today's meeting will be to act in a way to look at the budget that's been proposed by the town and to work on determining how we can either approve it or move it forward in a future meeting. With that, can I have a motion for adoption of the agenda?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we begin to discuss the 2026 budget, is there anyone here for other public comments that would like to come to the podium? Kate or Laura, is there anyone online that would like for a public comment? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the only agenda item, which is A, to review and discuss the draft fiscal year 2026 budget. Discussions will include presentations by town staff regarding departmental needs. Commissioners will discuss all aspects of the upcoming fiscal year, including financial policies, expenditures, and revenue stream. I turn it to Town Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So good afternoon. I'm Bill Zolper, the Town Manager. The 2025 budget season, we're almost to the end of it. We've had a really good year. Sheena's done a great job. Our department heads have done a good job staying within the budget. We had a budget amendment last month to balance the budget out. Our auditors think that's a good idea, so that's why we're doing that. I would really like to point out the work that Sheena's done in the 4 years that I've been here as town manager, how we pushed the budget forward every year, doing something a little different, getting better each time. And I'm hoping today at this workshop, because that's what it is a workshop, we get a good exchange of ideas. If there's something that you feel that we can do better, then please let us know and we'll try to do it better. If there's something you'd like to see different, we'll do something different this year. But Sheena's done a really good job getting us up into this 2026 budget. I will say in 2026, we're fully staffed. We do not need to hire anybody else. And when I say that, that's the full-time staff. Of course, the summer staff will be different. Today, what you're going to see is I'm going to bring each one of the department heads that has in the budget here that Sheena and I thought was necessary to be available for questions. That'll be Captain Todd Fritchman. It'll be Scott from maintenance. It'll be Tammy, and then it'll be the chief. And then Sheena's going to go over revenues, expenses, and then she's going to talk about allocations, where we are before allocations, where we are after allocations. And again, this is a workshop. We want to hear everybody's ideas, so please, if there's something that you have, let us know. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheena.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be showing you the operating budget, what it takes to run the town, start to finish, just the operating. Then I will show you the capital expenditures separately. The nice things that we need, the extras, the ATVs, the cars, the buildings, the streets and infrastructure. If the commissioners and those in budget and finance that are here can look at the monitor above me, you'll see what's in front of me. It's a summary. Now, last Friday, I sent out a budget. There's been a few things that have changed since that, to the good. I found out what the transfer tax that we got in November that I'll receive this month. That will put the transfer tax so far this fiscal year at $800,000. So I've projected for fiscal 26, $700,000. instead of 650. So that would up our revenue for 26 to 5,934,500. I also, after doing some reviews, found that by switching banks, we have saved $45,000 in banking and credit card fees. So that would reduce our expenses by $45,000 down to $15,000. Of course, increasing transfer tax goes up by $500. Our total expenses go to $5,797,767 for a difference in the black of $136,737. That is before any allocations. That's just expenses minus, or revenues minus expenses. Then we have the allocations,
Set aside.
set-asides.
Sheena, could you go back to that
Yes, sir.
for a second? So you reduced expenditures by $45,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's all, thanks.
Significant.
Now, these allocations, there is one that is in code, that is a 20% of building permit fees goes automatic, that goes to streets and infrastructure. There are other allocations, set-asides, that are not in code or resolution or ordinance, whichever it is, but we have been doing. Those are 3% of transfer tax to streets and infrastructure, 5% of transfer tax to rainy day, 5% of daily and seasonal parking to streets and infrastructure, and 50% of hotel tax to capital improvements, town hall.
We didn't do a resolution on that hotel tax?
No, sir.
All right.
But there was a vote.
There was a vote on all of those,
On
but
all
there
of
is
those, right.
no resolution.
Okay, but we voted on it.
You voted
Yes.
on it, but there is nothing official.
Certified. Right.
The ones for, besides that one, the other three were before I got here 7 years ago. So I don't know when they exactly were. Those total allocations based on this budget come to $455,000. So that net difference is $318,000. If you just go with the one that's codified, we would still be in the black. So that made me kind of happy. But we still need to come up with $318,000. Any questions on those numbers? That's a lot of numbers I just threw at you.
I'm good.
We good? Okay, the revenues. Taxes and assessments. Those come in at $2,135,000. That is transfer tax, accommodations tax, hotel tax. Accommodations tax and lodging tax are both 3%. Accommodations tax comes in about $800,000, lodging tax comes in about $400,000. It is also the money we get from Comcast for
Cable TV franchise.
yeah, that's the one. And then the money we get for the beach from Dave Linens.
Beach concession.
Licensing and permit fees. That's rental license, commercial building, commercial licensing, your building permits, your parking permits and licensing. Those we're taking down a little to just over 3 million. Fines staying the same. That's parking fines and ordinance fines. Donations and other revenues. That's any other revenues. Our revenues we're predicting down about 187,000 to 5,900,000. Any questions? Our expenses. That's where it all comes in. We're The police union, though they have a set amount of increase, can't do anything about it. The state has said that the benefits will go up 10% this year. They told us all early because they got a lot of flack 2 years ago, and they got a lot of flack last year about the increase. So they have set it at 10%. General and administrative is town-wide expenses such as the meters, trash collection, things like that. It is town hall employees. It is parking enforcement. It is aldermen. It is building and code. Public safety is the police department. Streets and maintenance is street, town-wide expenses as well as our maintenance department. Beach safety is beach safety. Our seasonal employees, our beach patrol, as Captain Fritchman has told you in the past, is very underpaid in reference to other towns. So we have increased their salaries. Our seasonal police, we have increased their wages. Our seasonal parking, I would not do that job. And so we have increased their hourly rate to try to get more to come in and do the job. Our overall year-round employees, we have put a 4% increase. And truthfully, if we went down, what we say, a 3% was only $6,000 difference across the board. So it wasn't much different.
Because the police are at 4% for all the uniforms, so that would stay constant, and they're our largest salary across the board.
So the overall increase of expenses was roughly $163,000. Most of that is salaries.
Question I have for you, Sheena, if you could go back up just a little bit on that screen.
Yes, sir.
There you go. The fiscal 25 amended and then the fiscal 26. You show the fiscal 26, 37,000 less. With inflation, with the things the way they go, you had to amend the budget to actually do what you had to do. Would it be wrong, and maybe even Bill would know this, would it be wrong to leave it at the same amended 25? Even though you're saving $37,000, I can see that going away with a storm.
That's that $45,000 we saved on bank fees.
But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is, why don't we make 26 the same as amended 25?
We may not make $800,000 in transfer tax.
And that was the other question I had, was
We're-
when it came down, I just leave it at where it was at 7, anything after that is gravy.
Right, so we're leaving it, originally we were at 450, then we changed it to 650. And then after this year, looking at, we got to 800,000 this year. Instead of us going to 800,000 for 2026, we figure we better be conservative and go to 700,000. We may end up at 800,000, but right now, the way the budget's done, we're at 700,000 for transfer
Okay,
tax.
I just saw that the budget is less than what it is for amended fiscal year 25, and I would almost say leave it the same, but that's just.
If we bring in more revenue, we may balance the bubble out if we end up spending a little more in possibly police overtime.
Okay,
So those are the areas where we stand. What we were thinking is if you would like to we were thinking of having the department heads explain their areas to you now, unless you have something about my numbers that you would like.
Yeah, before we get into that, I'd like to open council, if they, like ZCAT or if Iris has any specific questions on what's been presented here before we get into some of the details. But from my conversations with you, Sheena, please correct me if I'm wrong, while you had indicated that there's 4% increase right now for the employees, and indicated also that that excludes the police collective bargaining contract. But I also believe that there are increases that are embedded in here that are outside the 4% to accommodate where, for town thought that people were being underpaid, such as the seasonals, as we talked about, the lifeguards, the ambassadors on the beach. But I also believe that the same was done for the dispatch. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The dispatchers, when I started here, were making about $12 an hour.
How long ago was that?
7 years ago. As of right now, they're up to about $17 an hour. Comparable neighboring towns are making roughly $24 an hour. That was requested by the police department. I told them there was no way we could do that. We agreed on 20.
So when the chief comes up, Mayor, she'll be able to answer some questions about why the increase for the police dispatch that we're asking for.
That's fair. I just wanted, if we can, when we get, this process continues to get better every year. But some of those underlying assumptions that are embedded in here that the community might not know, might be for it to have that as a qualitative overview
Okay.
of things that are in there. Council, do you have any specific questions before we get into the department by department side?
I had a question about the under general administrative, this is a very specific question. The IT software and support goes up by $25,000. What's behind that?
Yes, sir. The council graciously approved us getting a new timekeeping software so that we could better keep track and help our payroll. We are also getting 2 new modules that will make it where our payroll processing and our accounting will go smoother and will alleviate double entry. We will have
Manual work.
we won't have to take it, the entries that are done in the front for entering permits and licensing and then enter it into QuickBooks. It will all be done in one place and it will make everything smoother and more accurate.
Elizabeth? Just a question, since Gary took that away from me.
That's what I do.
I know you do. It's okay. That's why I appreciate you so much. Are there expenditures that we're seeing in the 2026 budget that were approved as part of the 2025 operations that are being pushed into the next fiscal year? So for example, I would have expected the 25,000 for the improvements in the modules to be in the current fiscal year where we have surplus versus the next fiscal year. Are there other things other than that?
No. You had approved the 25,000 for the item for the police.
Correct.
And that's gonna happen within fiscal 25. It just hasn't happened yet.
Oh, I thought you were saying that's what the $25,000 part of the IT,
No, that's for
part of the module, but we already approved that.
No, you approved the timekeeping, but it'll have an ongoing annual. And then the new modules for the accounting software for the
Edmonds and QuickBooks.
Edmonds.
It'll get rid of QuickBooks and,
So we discussed the Edmonds and the timekeeping program that we wanted probably 2-3 months ago here at a meeting. Sheena came up and gave a presentation. At that time, the commissioners approved the timekeeping. That's really going to help us because the police department has a bunch of different hours they work. They get shift differential. They get overtime on some things. And then with Todd's team coming in and out, there's actually going to be a separate clock over here. I call it a clock. It'll be a monitor on the wall where the lifeguards will come in and punch in and out. Right now, every day Captain Fritchman does a roll call. That piece of paper gets turned in over to Sheena as a piece of paper. This is really going to bring us into the 20th century with time and attendance. And then the module for Edmonds, that's going to take those steps out of Sheena having to double all the finance every month for our monthlies. It'll be just done at one time.
and then when you want the financial reports, I won't have to manually key everything. It will,
Yeah, I get it.
So,
That was my
quick discussion.
issues on the timing.
Which year it's being built.
Right, right.
yes.
And is that, I got confused with what was just said, that is not now an annual cost?
There will be, that will be the annual, that will have an annual cost.
But it's not the 25,000?
The two of them together
It's
will be the
$110,000.
total.
Got it, okay.
So, just one other comment. At some point, I want to talk about the notion of surplus and what kind of surplus we anticipate. And when I say that because last year, I know the Finance Committee said, any surplus that we have will apply to the capital improvement fund for the new town hall. And my sense is that there wasn't any contribution as a result of surplus to that fund. And I think what happened to the surplus is that it was absorbed into the requirements for meeting the fund balance requirements, the rainy day fund in particular, and the unassigned fund requirement. Because every time we increase $1 in the budget, you have to put 50 cents, you have to have 50 cents more in the rainy day fund, and you have your minimum for the unassigned balance has to go up by 15 cents. So I think that's what happened, but maybe you can confirm that at some point. I'm just worried about when we get to the end of this year, we have to think about surplus. I mean, I think for the current fiscal year, based on the projections you did earlier, and I did some re-examination of those, I think we'll be able to cover the increased need for the rainy day fund with the anticipated surplus this year. So I mean, I think we're okay, but I just want to keep that in mind because, again, every time the budget goes up, we have that additional requirement.
Right.
All right, go ahead.
Once the budget or everything is done, and the council will make the decision that X amount goes to capital expenditures, X amount goes rainy day. The unassigned is actually the way the calculations happen. The unassigned ends up being, because it is such a small amount, ends up being a catch-all. And it ends up being far more than the 15%. When the auditors do the final calculations, we tell them, once this is funded and this is funded, the rest goes into the town hall, and that is where it ends up going.
All I'm saying is I don't recall that happening this past year.
It did.
I didn't see any contribution here, but maybe I missed that. But we can talk about
Okay.
that some more.
Paul, any questions? Okay. All right, let's move on from department to department, depending on how you would like to
Yeah,
proceed.
so what I'd ask is that we have each department head come up. This Captain Fritchman will explain why he feels that we need to go to the $19, and then also talk about what equipment he needs in the capital expenses for this year, and then he'll field any questions that you may have.
Should I do that from here? Or do you...
No, right here.
Okay.
We're good.
Yep, super. Good afternoon, everyone. Todd Fritchman, Dewey Beach Patrol Captain. So I'm here to provide a justification statement for our budget increase, and that's primarily relative to wages and salaries to bring us closer to the standard pay within the industry and the comparable and also uncomparable municipalities and townships in the state of Delaware and Eastern Shore, Maryland. The research that we provide we acquire through the Sussex County Life Saving Association of Captains, Ocean City Beach Patrol, Lewis Beach Patrol, all of them, show that we are significantly under the standard rate. And so as an investment, the town as an investment, mind you, if you would, we are trying to close that gap and bring us closer to a standard to go from 17 to 19. That would still put us, I believe, Bethany will be coming in at 1975 for their first year guards this year. That's the last report I got. Still a little lower, but close enough in my opinion. But do hold in mind that the Beach Patrol is a liability prevention service. That's what we are. And we go above and beyond open water rescue lifeguarding. We are providing the entire emergency medical response services for the town while we're on duty, which is significant. The statistics indicate that. Those that have been in town long enough know that we come through your door if you succumb. and we will save your life or keep you alive until someone else is in charge of you, but, and that's been successful during the course of the time. So there's really two programs built into this budget. There's the open water rescue for Ocean and Bay, and that liability involved in that, but also the emergency medical. There is no separate budget established, like in the city of Rehoboth or town of Bethany, for fire rescue to come in and provide EMT and emergency medical responder, EMR services. So you get two for the price of one. It's really important. To date, there has been no liability claim against, is there wood, any wood in here? I think there's
Everywhere.
some under here. Seriously. There has been zero claims. If you were to look at other municipalities, every incident of death and dying or exasperated injury results in millions in payouts. So we've avoided that. I think the investment is sound, fair, and then I can answer any more specific questions on how we determine this budget.
Your equipment.
Yeah, the only other addition is we do need a new ATV response vehicle for emergency medical services, surveillance, general maintenance of the facility. As you know, we assess the beach every morning. We remove dead and stranded organisms, reptiles, mammals. We pick up the logs, the debris, clean up parties, dog waste, whatever it might be that other maintenance providers may not get to, and we got to do it immediately. So that emergency, plus for me to do my 4 times a day surveillance, lieutenants to do theirs, but especially the EMR, this thing gets souped up with lights and sirens and all the jump bags and everything we need, AEDs to sustain life. So that investment is another thing that we're looking at, the Polaris Ranger.
Is that on here?
So,
It's under capital expenditures where
Oh,
we get
but
at
not
the end,
under-
but
okay.
as the department heads come up, I want them to discuss why they need those. So for example, the one piece of equipment that Captain Fritchman is talking about replacing is over 10 years old. It still operates, but when we take it down for maintenance, they said the front end is so rusted on it, it's a liability actually when we operate it. So we will be, putting that out of service. We'll sell it at an auction. And then we hope if approved, we will purchase a new ATV.
So this is the $15,000 capital item?
Yes.
Is that what I'm saying? Okay.
But it's not under equipped asset purchase on this.
It's in the capital
It's in
expense.
capital.
The other one.
And we'll get to that at the end, but I want
Okay.
each department head to explain that.
Thank
So
you.
I had a couple of questions for you. First one is, are your total hours that you're looking in the budget the same in terms of your?
We're not increasing hours,
You're not increasing the hours?
no, 8-hour shifts.
Okay, so the same number of guards, same hours planning on. And then you mentioned Bethany. Do you happen to know where Lewis, Rehoboth, and the state parks are salary-wise?
I have a general idea right now. Rehoboth is coming in at $23 an hour to
Starting?
start.
As a rookie,
Yeah. So that's
they're proposing.
pretty tough, because we compete with them directly. And Bethany in 1975 as the second lowest.
State
See-
parks are above 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sea Colony is up there like 23, something like that.
and one more time, we're going from what to what on the budget?
So from 17 to
to
19
19.
as the entry level
Okay.
wage with a 25%, or excuse me, 25-cent increase step per year, capped at 5 years. So there's a cap to all this. We're not just free run here, keep coming back and everything like that. But we want the people to come back. But we realize we have a responsibility of maintaining some kind of budget here, but so.
And I can confirm with what Todd was saying that Rehoboth is at 23 starting out, so something to consider.
Great. Council, questions for Captain?
Todd, with Rehoboth being at 23, even when we go to 19, I mean, it's, if I'm an average person, lifeguard age, here, that's still a big difference.
Still a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I think my job is to sell the program, to recruit
Right.
people. I'm
Right.
pretty good at it.
He's really good at it, yeah.
I've got ways, we have incentives here in Dewey. People want to work here. They know the program. Their parents want them here because they want them under a disciplined system. So they send them here. They know what the outcomes are going to be. So
How much, if we went to 20, what does that change it to? How much more does that affect that budget?
I'd have to go through and do the math. It would take me about a half hour, but Sheena could
probably do
it
it in a few
faster than
minutes.
me. Yeah.
Well, going up 2 raised it
Well, I mean, at this budget, it's
40.
47,000, so.
Right.
Theoretically,
Half
another
that.
23, right?
another 20 grand.
And
I don't think it would be that much.
And I still think Captain Fritchman going to $19, we still, and I say we, I come out to his 3 tryouts during the year and watch those in March and the beginning of April. He has plenty of folks, correct me if I'm wrong, come out to your tryouts.
We've never been deficient. There's been a couple years where we just had 1 more than we needed or 2 more than we needed. We've never been deficient, but we want to keep it that way. Because to make this work, you got to have the staff or it turns into a nightmare and you end up with voids and deficiencies and that deviates from structure and instructional integrity, all kinds of stuff.
Thank you, Captain. Any other questions? What I said is for Finance Committee as well.
We'll take the 20.
Thanks, Paul. Could you put that in Paul's bucket, please?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Let's move on to
Next will be maintenance. We'll talk about your program, introduce yourself. Yeah. Thanks. To introduce yourself.
Scott Sheffo, Maintenance Supervisor for Town of Dewey Beach. What do you want to know? I need a lot of money.
So let me say this, I think a great example of our 2 maintenance folks was after the snow we just had.
Yes.
I think if you look at our streets and our sidewalks and how quickly they were cleared after that, it's a testament to how hard these 2 individuals work getting the job done. Scott comes from a background with Sussex County Water and Sewer. It has paid dividends for us when we have problems around town in the connection and communication with Sussex County Water and Sewer. Good example is the fire hydrants during this snowstorm, making sure the fire hydrants were clear in case we had a fire and they weren't covered up by snow. I mean, with his communication and contacts with the county, with me sending an email, we had the county out here and Scott was out, they were clearing the fire hydrants in case we had any fires. So the Chief Snyder's folks could get to those hydrants. We're very lucky to have Scott with us. Not only that, but he's a great mechanic. Talk about maybe changing brakes on our vehicles, our trucks, instead of taking them to Rehoboth Auto or somewhere else, Scott's able to do that. So we really do have a good employee here. And then with our other employee, he came from Denrec. He's certified to operate heavy equipment. So we're very fortunate there also. So I'm sorry, Scott.
Sorry. Everything I have works. I just need money set aside for new equipment when it does break. You know, we got some Lowe's push mowers, stuff like that. Half of it's plastic. It breaks, you know, stuff like that. But stuff I really need, like, I need a good pressure washer. We have to wash the lifeguard chairs before we paint them. Different stuff like that. Something that's got some good pressure to it. Rip all the loose paint off, let it dry, paint it. Oops, sorry about that.
Do you have anything in the capital budget?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any capital budget requests? I'm like looking through it.
So all his requests are small items that Sheena and I didn't feel met the capital expense. So for example, if we go to buy another Kubota piece of equipment at $53,000, that would be in the capital expenditures. But the small stuff we're talking about, power washers, new push mower, a light aluminum trailer so our mowers can be pulled around town, things like that. Those things we didn't feel would be capital expenditures.
Nothing's over $5,000 individually.
So we didn't put those in.
But you do have $5,000 in here for those kinds of items, all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is actually for Sheena on this, because I just noticed the steep increase on the employee benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So help me understand, we have 2 people, right? And so what's our situation, this permeates the budget in all departments,
It
right?
does.
What's the situation with our employee benefits costs when looking at that, just like shot that out?
I have to be careful how I do this. An individual changed their coverage level from individual to individual and spouse mid-year. So that increased the premium because they did have a change of,
Say that, it costs more with
That's fine.
family and all
Right.
that. Yeah, I get all
yeah.
that, yeah.
So that was the increase.
Okay. So I guess my question, to be kind of more specific, we have two people in the maintenance department, right?
Right.
And it's $80,000 in employee benefits costs.
One has employee and spouse and the other has full family.
Okay, so is that's more than health insurance then, right?
It's health insurance, dental, vision, and life.
Okay, that doesn't include like any 401k, whatever, 401k
No, sir.
matching or any of that?
Pension and taxes.
That would be under pension.
Okay, wow.
Which is very small in this case.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to the services being provided by those two individuals. I know that seems like a lot, but our two employees are paid less than what you may find in some of the surrounding beach towns on salary, but we make up for it in benefits.
And some of that is reflecting the 10% increase projected in the
Yes.
insurance costs for
Yes,
next
ma'am.
year.
How many people then work for town hall?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 5 full-time and one that is at 60%.
Because, I mean, so I'm just looking just quickly at just because the benefits for the town hall is about almost the same as for maintenance for a lot more people, so.
But it depends on coverage levels.
Yeah.
And, yeah, for example, we have some that have
And if they're scaled
TRICARE.
on salary and stuff
Right,
like that.
if you have military, for you have TRICARE, so you're not going on our benefits.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary.
Since we're talking about staffing, one of the requirements that we have in our charter is that we have a staffing plan. And we need to have that for the budget. I mean, I don't want to get down the road, approve a budget, and then somebody come back and challenge, say, well, you don't have a staffing plan, so
We will,
it's not valid.
I will have that for the next, since we weren't approving the budget at this time, we were just discussing
Okay.
the,
So,
Numbers,
the
revenues,
numbers.
expenses.
I
Yeah.
would suggest in doing that take a look at not only section 22, which has all of the requirements for town budget, but there's also a paragraph in section 8 that relates to staffing as well. And I just want to make sure that we cover the specifics of that.
Oh, definitely.
We discussed last March, I think it was, some possible amendments to the charter, and one of the ones that we approved was deleting the first part of that paragraph in section 8. But that's still part of our charter because we have not pursued that. We have not taken that to the state legislature and actually changed the charter, so. I just want to make sure that we satisfy all the requirements.
Oh, definitely.
yeah, I agree, Gary. I thought, one of the things, outcome today is we'll have a clear direction in terms of where we're heading, so that when it does come to council, we have all that detail
Right.
that can support it. Okay. I don't have any other questions from a maintenance perspective.
Thank you, you did a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next will be parking, which is a huge revenue for the town, as everybody knows. It's a hard job. Tammy does a great job.
I can.
Hi. I'm Tammy Horn, Supervisor of Parking Enforcement. How's everybody today?
Good, how are you?
Fine.
How's your trailer?
It's fine.
Tammy's one of our longest employees here,
How long?
20-plus years.
Wow.
94, I think. It's been a long time. Most of it was all part-time. So We would like to raise the starting wage for the parking enforcement. Last year, we were able to get a full staff. We had 9 people. But nobody wants to work full-time hours, like 40 hours. So occasionally, I was lucky enough to get some J1 students to fill in the gaps. And then when everybody, the younger ones that we did have left for college, I lost 5 people within a matter of a couple of weeks. And the J1s filled in to get us through the end. But Rehoboth last year, their wages were $17.50 an hour. Lewis was $17.64. Bethany was the lowest at $16. So if Rehoboth raises theirs, then they're going to be up to, more than likely up to where we are, possibly over where we are. And it might help for us to at least go up to 19 to try to get some more qualified applicants.
Where were we this past year?
18. The last 2 years, we've been at 18.
Any questions for Tammy so far?
And what's in this budget then? Is this, the budget has 19?
Yes,
And that's for 9 part-time.
yes.
So the plan is to stay with all part-time and no full-time.
Well, they're all seasonal. So I try to get some that work for 40 hours, full-time hours, but it's not always easy with retirees.
Have you ever done any work or analysis on your staffing levels and revenue, and the impact on revenue?
No.
I'm just like wondering, more people, more money, I'm just wondering what the ROI is on more versus less people, what the return is on your revenue producing department.
That was my thought. When you lose 5 people because they go back to school, that means you don't have people going
Well,
out.
I was able to get 4 of those 5 replaced.
Okay.
Before, they actually started just before the last couple left. So we were a little overstaffed until they were
training time.
finished. Yeah.
You had some training time. Okay.
When you say nobody wants to work 40 hours, what are they average per person, just roughly?
30, maybe 35 at the most.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sheena, also, when we're looking here, we have a similar situation that we had with the last section and looking at maintenance, and that the employee benefit cost, again, is a large percentage of the salary. When we publish this data, could we also publish the tiered rates that we have, so people can easily see that if it's family times X, it's going to cross?
It's one employee that has benefits because there's only one full-time and one part-time year-round employee in this department.
So there are benefits then for one full-time family is $45,470 per
Yes.
year.
Yes.
Very rich benefit.
Yes, we do.
That's what I pay privately.
Okay.
Hi, Tammy. It's Vinny Susi from the Finance Committee. How are you?
Hi.
Tammy, to follow up to that same question regarding the staffing model and revenue per FTE, I think that would be a great project to go through. And I'd be more than willing to help you with that, given the significant revenue that your area brings into the town. Do you have any sense of how much revenue we may be leaving on the table or past due fines that we're just not collecting? We're not, putting the tickets on the cars?
There's probably about 600, and that might be a little bit high, out of the 6,000 to 7,000 that we wrote that haven't been paid, that we're going to be sending to collection soon.
Okay. I'm sorry, what I was referring to is, are there offenders that we're not catching?
It's possible. I mean, they can't be everywhere. Because some people park after they've already gone through, and if they leave before they've come back,
Exactly.
then it's a good possibility, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how the technology of Park Mobile would help us be more efficient and catch more violators. Just a thought. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but
I
I
guess,
would definitely like to explore what opportunities we would have there to possibly collect more that we may be missing.
yeah, I guess kind of following up on his question, do you, with your coverage level of 9, do you have like shift scenarios you're missing where like on a Friday night, you just don't have someone who can get through the town in time, and you think that there is an opportunity to get more revenue if you add in that extra person during a shift or something like that? Do you see a lot of that or no?
I try to divide the town up into 4 areas for them to cover, but some of the streets at night, when it gets later, they go as a group because of it being dark and just for safety purposes.
Right.
And sometimes we have some females. But I do try to schedule more people for the nighttime shift instead of daytime. And most of them all ride bicycles, so they can get around a little easier, faster.
And do you like surge and have like more people working like on the weekends, for example, have, you know, all 9 like on the busier weekends and then maybe less on a Monday, Tuesday, or is it just?
Yeah, I try
Yeah,
to put
just do
more
that.
on the weekends.
I don't know how
The
it works, I'm not being
Yeah,
critical.
the
I just-
busier time, I try. There's only, on Mondays, it's just the day shift, so sometimes during the day, we might only have 2 people so that I can utilize more at nighttime.
Any other questions for Tammy?
Well, when you had one less person in that part of August, could you see the drop off in parking revenue, or was it about the same? We don't have to do it now, but that'd be interesting to see, because that would be to that point of, you know, is there,
Will more make more?
Right.
yeah. It's only one data point, but. no.
I can see if I can get you the information.
6,000 tickets, 9 people, 800 tickets per person.
Is Rehoboth, do you know if they're planning on increasing their wages too?
I would assume so. They always have in the past, but I don't really know.
So just want to mention, Rehoboth has tag readers on vehicles. It's easier in this city of Rehoboth because the way they park on the avenue, a tag reader from a vehicle can go very quickly down the road and read those tags, get out, write those tickets. We're a little different here in Dewey. It's a little harder to do that with the way that folks park. Some of our streets are parallel, some of our streets are perpendicular. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about other ways that we could actually maybe do more enforcement on folks that are not paying. One of the things that Sheena and I are going to suggest when we get to possibly increase revenue is raising the fines. And we can talk about that when we get to it.
And there's usually always 2 people in the car that when they ride around to check the tags.
So we do not have a tag reader in town.
There's a very old one, I think, on one of the police vehicles, and I don't even know if it operates anymore, but we'd have to explore if that would even work with the way folks park here in town.
I apologize for not knowing this. So when one of your seasonals approaches a car, is it looking out of a list of people that have already?
Once they put the license plate in, if they have a virtual permit, it should pop up. And if they pay through Park Mobile, it should pop up as well. If they pay at the kiosk, we have an app that we have to go through.
So every car has to be individually checked.
And then if we check for a hang tag or a piece of paper on the dashboard that they may have paid, now they've got this receipt on the dashboard. So it takes a while to go to each car in town.
And
It's
back
very
or-
intensive.
Back or front, because the license is behind, but on the dashboard is the front.
Sometimes, yeah, the
Yeah.
permits.
Would the tag reader speed that process up?
It might if it works for the way the folks park. I don't know. Possibly Lieutenant Dempsey may have a little more information. He's been here the longest for the tag readers, but I know we haven't used it since I've been here.
All about it, sir.
Lieutenant, do you have an opinion on the tag reader?
They
Please
were
go to the
very
microphone.
successful. What we would do is we coordinate with parking, we loaded it into a database, and they owned up. They're actually still on the pickup truck now. I don't believe, they're probably so antiquated, I don't know if they would work. But all day long, the officers and the seasonals, whoever was driving, as they drove through town, it even caught the tags that were, a lot of the vehicles that were parked close together in the parallel parking areas. And in that database, we would load in, I think it was if you're 5 tickets in the hole, it would alert us as soon as we drove by. We stopped and they throw a boot on the car.
Okay. We may just want to look at some technology to aid in the process, so if that's something you want, if you guys can look into that,
Okay.
to be a little bit more efficient, that'd be great. Any other questions for Tammy? Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Keith.
Are we gonna talk about, I do have one question about the parking revenue, and
Yeah, we're
Are
gonna,
we gonna go
you're
that
in-
separate?
we're gonna do that separate. So once we
Okay,
get, my thought is, once we have understand what the operating expenditures requirements need, plus the set aside requirements, we'll know what that number is to try to build the balanced budget on the revenue side. Thank you. Here comes the big spender.
Big spender right here.
A song, Hey Big Spender.
Hey, big spender.
She also works to cover her.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chief Speaks. Not really sure what you'd like me to cover. I know we're going to go over capital expenditures later, but I can bring up the one thing on that. As far as the seasonal officers, so we're currently at $18 an hour. It's proposed in this budget to go to $19 an hour. Rehoboth is going to $21.50. I believe it was $1,500 sign-in bonus. And I think they get $500 bonus if they stay until a certain time in the fall. And Bethany has confirmed that they're going up to $20 an hour. So obviously, our seasonals make less than the surrounding areas. However, as Cliff knows, who's been here 24 years, our seasonals come here because they want to work and they want to rest people, and they have more rest powers here. So we do get our seasonals to come to work. So $19 would be a good bump for them. I've already interviewed 13 seasonals since December. I already informed them that their pay was $18. Nobody batted an eye. However, I did tell them they possibly may go up to 19 if it gets approved in the budget. And nobody was saying, oh, well, I'm gonna go look at Rehoboth because they pay more. So they want to be in Dewey because they get to do real police work in Dewey. So we really don't have a problem hiring seasonals at this point.
So I did have a question about the seasonals. So back when we approved additional staff for your team.
Yes.
We had a discussion about the fact that you were gonna have less seasonals because you'd be able to cover more with staff.
Yes.
And then when I looked at kind of the 5-year budget on seasonals, I mean, it certainly looks stabilized, but it doesn't look, when I look at it, I don't see kind of the savings in the seasonal number coming down. So I just kind of want you to kind of walk me through.
So when I first got here, I think we were budgeted for, I don't know, 2 years ago, 17 seasonals.
Yeah.
It was a pretty large number. We never hired that many. I think I hired 15. 2 quit after the first week, Memorial Day weekend. And then I ended up with 13. Last year, you approved us for 12. I hired 12. And I was lucky enough to keep all 12 for the whole season. This year, we were hoping to hire 14. Reason being, if a couple quit, the goal is to keep it 12. We really need 12 to make it work. We try to have 10 out there, all at the night shifts and the weekends. And then I actually liked having 1 or 2 on day work to have more presence on day work, because we have a lot of people in town on day work, on the beaches and everywhere, and we get a lot of calls. So the goal is to have 12 minimum. 14 would be nice in case we lose somebody. We do, just like everybody else with parking, people leave at different times. They may go to school, they might have to go to college the first week of August. So we start losing people at the beginning of August, so.
So I guess the savings that you were talking about was over the budgeted number of people we had, not the actual number of people we had working. Is that basically what's
Yeah,
coming down?
well, and as we said, we would save money when we get up to full complement. When I first got here, we had 8, we were slated for 10, so we were short-staffed, paying a lot of overtime. We're still gonna have to bring in officers from the outside for all our big weekends and stuff, just because we have so many people in town. But when we get up to 13, our recruit graduates in March, St. Patty's weekend. So we'll be fully staffed, and then that will reduce the amount of officers that have to come in on overtime, or some of the officers that come in from outside agencies to assist us.
All right.
But the $19 an hour would be a good bump for them. I mean, if we can't do it, we can't do it, because I do have the applicants, but the other agencies are paying a lot more. As far as, I know we're not talking capital expenditures till later, but just to bring up, I did. Yeah, I did drop down, I had a much larger wish list, capital expenditure list. I dropped that down to, I believe we're at 3 items now. I need 2 trucks. I'm looking to purchase 2 trucks. I have 4 vehicles. I know I sent out my yearly report. It has have our vehicle list on it. I have 4 old vehicles, 2015 to 2017. The highest mileage is 120,000, and the lowest on the 2017 is 74,000 miles. So those vehicles all need to be replaced. For years and years, the vehicles were not replaced or maintained here. They didn't get tires, they didn't get anything they needed, so they're falling apart. So what we're doing our best to, obviously, as you've seen, we brought in new vehicles, we got someone free for grants, and we're trying to update all the vehicles and the equipment so they keep running, because we do spend a lot of money on repairing the used vehicles, such as transmissions, and just a little bit of everything falling apart on them. They do cost us a lot of money, so 2 vehicles this year is really important for me. Plus, we added, now we're up to 13 officers. If you looked at my list, I currently only have, I have a spare, which is going to be the K-9 spare, and I have one, that older truck. That is the spare for like when we have the part-timers work, and we have the transport van. So, and I have a recruit coming out of the academy in March that's going to need a car.
How much is the take-home program impacting the number of vehicles that we have to kind of keep purchasing and cycling through?
What do you mean?
Well, the officers get take-home vehicles.
They do.
Right, not everyone does that. I'm just trying to understand how much that impacts how many vehicles the town would otherwise need, that we're cycling through.
Well, honestly, if you have a take-home car, it's better maintained than having, officers use the same car over and over in every shift. It lasts a lot longer, and actually, most of the agencies all around us all have take-home. They've all gone to take-home. Even Rehoboth currently, talked to the chief last week, and they're outfitting 12 brand-new cars. So everybody at Rehoboth will have a take-home car. Bethany has take-home cars, Ocean View, Fenwick, they all do. So, but that was my big expenditure list, was the 2 trucks. I really need those, because I still have 4 old vehicles I need to replace. So that's the goal, is to get 2 trucks this year. That'd be very important to us.
So if let's say we get your fleet where you want, because you've been working on this for a long time, what's the steady state number of vehicles a year from the planning perspective that you need?
Once we get everything replaced?
Well, once you're kind of in a steady state with 13 officers.
Yeah.
What's the steady state of number of vehicle replacements per year?
Well, if we get to it with everybody with a decently new vehicle, there could be some years where we don't need a vehicle, when we get to that point.
I'll ask it a different way. What's the average age that you would,
of the cars?
That you would need to retire a vehicle?
Really?
It's mileage really and maintenance. I would say 7-8 years.
So
Depending on.
basically 2 years is your steady run rate,
Yeah.
would be what I'm hearing. You've got 13 officers.
Once we get to all these cars replaced, we'll be in pretty good shape. And the other item on my list was AEDs. We don't have enough AEDs per car. So I'm also looking for grant money for that, just so it'd be nice to have one in every vehicle in case we need them before paramedics or anybody else arrive on the scene. That was kind of important for us. Those are my 2 big things.
And I'd like to just note that when the chief first turned in her budget and we sat down with Jackie and Clifford, and I cut from her budget about $50,000. And then I turned around from capital expenses and cut probably another $30,000. And the chief and I decided the cars were the most important thing in capital expenses with the AEDs, and then we cut the other things out. So it's not that the chief came to me and said, this is what I want, and I just said, and I've done that with everybody's budget. When they came to me, I went through and made cuts.
And I will add to that, we were able to obtain $307,000 in grants. So we are trying to find money for when we need equipment or anything. We try to find a grant for it to pay for it instead of it coming out of town money.
I had 3, maybe 4 questions. Salary and wages, can you just tell me what the assumptions are? There's a salary increase of additional, was it 3%, 4%? What is the percentage there? I mean, it grows by more
Good for her.
than that percentage. So what's behind that?
So in the contract, all the uniformed officers that are on the contract, it's a 4% each year for the next for 3-year contract.
Okay.
Except there's also some promotion, some step increases.
Yes.
Also.
3 of them have promotions, right?
Yeah, well, the recruit in the academy will go to up to the officer pay. And then we have 2 officers that will have their 1 year in March and they'll get the PFC pay. So those are bumps too.
So 4% would cover about half of the increase in the 26 budget from what we approved as a budget amendment for 2025. And so the rest of that is then promotions, step increases, and that sort of thing.
Yes, and the civilians are looking at a 4% for them, and then to increase the, as they mentioned earlier, the dispatchers to go up to $20 an hour. And one of the reason that's really important is we're probably gonna lose one of our dispatchers in the summer. He's gonna complete his nursing school, so he's gonna go and be a nurse. So it's very hard to hire somebody when you advertise it at $17 when Rehoboth is paying $24 an hour. So if we could at least get it to the 20 for our dispatchers, which is fair to them, as well, is that's easier to actually hire a replacement for that position. Because, I mean, you could go work at Chick-fil-A for $18 an hour, and dispatchers they require training, and they work shift work, and, we need them to keep us safe.
The increase in utilities, utilities apparently is phones in the department server. Is there something that it's like a $5,000 increase from what we approved as a budget amendment. Is there something that actually it's more than that, $10,000. Is there something we've already approved in terms of a better server, or I'm just wondering what's behind that?
That's all the MiFis and.
So the Cradle Points that were replaced.
Right.
The vehicles this year, it's a more efficient.
Explain it, please, Jackie.
So they're internet access for our officers in order to write tickets, connect to the technology they need to reach. Instead of the old MiFis we had, they now are in Cradle Points, which is through a Verizon service. So each of them has their own service.
And that's something we chose to do or had to do?
We had to do in order to have internet access in the cars for them to be able to do their jobs.
Okay.
And that was discussed further
For the
in
cameras.
report,
Yeah.
annual report. That's where I learned about that.
I've only taken a cursory look, as I told you, Chief, earlier today.
Well, that's where I'm like, I know this piece. How come I know it? It's because I read that report. Okay. So,
Just one other question then. The dues, publications, and subscriptions, those are up by $55,000 from the budget amendment?
That had to do with Jackie and the sergeant and I sitting down and going, wait a minute. Things have been, from back before the chief got here, things were told to me that in different things, they were told, oh, this is equipment maintenance, but it wasn't. That they were the Axon, the cameras that the officers have to wear. The state reimburses us for the subscription to that, and I was told, oh, that's equipment maintenance. Well, it wasn't. It was a $35,000 subscription.
Yeah.
oh,
And it was things like that, and we sat down and corrected where things were supposed to be to get things classified correctly. So we now have everything classified correctly.
Yeah, that's for the TASER contracts, to pay the contracts on that, the Axon cameras in the cars, it's everything that we have, that's all going under subscriptions, because that's what it is.
so it's not journal subscription.
No, it
This comes
was,
back to a qualitative overview as to see why, this guy's right, we wouldn't have known that the $9,000 coming out of equipment maintenance went into this 79,000 dues and
right, it was.
And what else of those negatives made up that
Right.
reallocation?
It's really $49,000 compared to the budget amendment.
Yeah.
So it's even down further than that. Okay, that's all I had. I appreciate that. Thank you.
When you redo this, when we're all done, I think it might be helpful, if the council agrees, is to make the variance based upon the amended budget
Okay.
versus the.
Not a problem.
Okay.
And Chief, with the new equipment, is that going to help with dispatch recruitment? That they don't have to write it into notebooks?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Well, they can say, that we can have state-of-the-art dispatch center with CAD, and then when we get our new system in, which hopefully will arrive we can get that installed in the spring based on the DEMA grant that we're finalizing. So yes, that will help, yes. Any other questions for me?
Oh, I did, just, it's not on here, how much overtime are we really needing to do? I mean, I know you have to do it on obviously all the holiday weekends, you probably have a lot of overtime there, but are we, on a regular basis, having to be in an overtime situation with our officers, just on a week-to-week basis, where you doing a lot of overtime?
I wouldn't say a week to week, it depends if people are out sick, if they have training and we have to cover a shift, that's usually it, but not as far as not having enough people to cover the road as much as it used to be. Because once we get that 13th person, we'll have enough for, minimum staffing is the goal of 2 at night minimum and 2 in the day. And in the summer, obviously, we need more at night out there. So no, our overtime, we're doing really well on that. We're trying to reduce it wherever we can and move people around. And we do have the contract that we have to abide by. But if someone has training one day, instead of giving them overtime, then we'll find a way to give them a schedule adjustment the next day so we don't have to pay overtime. So we're doing our best to try to minimize the overtime.
Can you, on David's comment, can you tell us out of the 1,347,000, how much of that is overtime?
That would be Machina.
And I know that we've approved the 13 officers that you currently have. Just as we're going into the budget season, is it safe to say that each hire is about, like, each one of those people is around $120,000? When you add the base, the benefits, the taxes?
Oh, with the benefits and everything, yeah, I would say, yeah, she would have that better as far as medical and all that than I would, but yeah.
110,765. Because we thought if we had to cut a body,
Right,
that's how much we would save.
111, okay.
Okay. I had projected straight overtime was roughly, just overtime hours was roughly 3,400. Not special duty, not the races, not anything like that. Just basic overtime that happened there, the overtime that the 4 hours
Training,
training,
is a
things
big
like
one.
that, ended up being for all their officers, 3,400 for the year.
Or $120,000 in overtime pay, if I can see from here.
Yes.
Okay, fine, that's reasonable.
I have way too many spreadsheets.
Any other questions for Chief Speak on the expenditures?
I'd also like to say the chief has some folks that work for her that are also carpenters. They do all sorts of other work
Vehicle
around the
maintenance.
building. If not, Scott would end up doing it, or we would have to hire somebody to come in and do it. So we really do, when I say we, the whole town really tries to do more than one role. And we've been very fortunate that we do have a carpenter and some other folks that work in the police department, along with Scott, that are able to work on projects instead of us hiring somebody to come in.
Do it all.
Do it all.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
What do we have left, William?
So we wanted to go over, and it'll be up to you, Mayor. Do you want to go right to capital expenses and expenditures and talk about that? Or would you like to talk about the possible options for revenue increase to make up that $300,000 after allocations? However, the commissioners want to proceed.
Could I just ask one question about revenue? I could have asked this earlier today, but in terms of revenue, this is it's minor, but I'm looking for every dollar possible there. Beach fires. We had $50,000 in the budget. We brought in almost $50,000 in FY25, yet you've taken it down to 35.
Correct, I did, because it was an anomaly. It really was an anomaly that we got that much this year. We've only been getting around 30,000 the past couple years. So,
And we got that much even though we had to close it down for a while
Right.
because of the dry.
So I wasn't, I
We're
just.
being
But I
conservative.
feel like it's easier to get to know about fires because it's much more publicized now and easier to do.
Right, but I can definitely put it up there, but I just,
I go to 50 myself, but I would go ahead and pick up another $15,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
that's fine. I just, to me, it was like, it seemed an anomaly for it to be up there so high.
You know, I think once we made it easier to do, more people did it. We didn't have a lot of rain last summer, so, I mean, that's a rain depending on, you can't have a bonfire when it's raining, but that's the only variable you have. I mean, they're well-liked and inexpensive and easy to do.
There was one other thing I noticed, police extra duty. That was, again, actual year-to-date was 63,880, but we're down to 1,500. So is that just a matter of being conservative again? I'm not sure exactly when that revenue was generated. Maybe the chief could fill us in on that a little bit, but
Oh,
this is police extra duty.
okay, that one, the extra was when North Beach and Starboard hired our officers to work during this summer. They have not led on that they are looking to hire us at all again this next summer.
Have they ever not?
Well, the North Beach didn't, and then they had some issues late at night. And after those issues, they approached the chief and the lieutenant and said, we need somebody in the parking lot. But we really can't count on that. The Starboard is more consistent. The 5Ks are more consistent, things like that. But when it comes to other, whether it's there or anywhere else in town, we don't know unless the owner asks us.
Okay.
But I think similar to what Gary brings up, the beach fire, I mean, if I look past the last 5 years, this police extra duty has been, the lowest has been 40. So I don't know why we wouldn't put it at 40 right now, just to, on the income side also. But we can go through those things in detail as we get into this. As we look to, I just want one clarification. Chief, the $130,000, that's for 3 vehicles or for 2?
Two. That's for 2 vehicles and the outfitting of the vehicles.
What's the cost on that again?
So it's another 25,000 outfit a vehicle?
Yep. We put in 130, the vehicles are 50 each, that's 100, and then 30,000 total to outfit them
15 apiece.
for both.
All right, so the 40,000 grant that we have for the police vehicles doesn't cover the patrol purchase. of the
So
vehicle.
we're not guaranteed every year.
I know, but I'm
Yeah, so we can't count on that, but we should get it, but it's not 100%. That's why we don't, it's not 100% that the county's gonna give us that money every year. We think it is, but Sheena and I talked about that, and I've, explained it to the chief that we can't, it's not a guarantee, so.
That's so unfortunate, none of our grants are guaranteed. When I first got here, the Sussex grant was 30,000, and then it was last year, it was 40,000. But we don't know if we get it or not every year.
All right, so before we get into council, and just before Gary and I start wrestling about certain things up here, I'm a lefty, so I have to, even if you've got a foot on me, I don't even know if I can reach. I look at the operating budget, first of all, in terms of what we're comparing it to, is the amended one in 2024, where we have 5.6 million expenses, and we're going to 5,797,000, so 180,000 more. So I think by going with the original budget, we make it seem like there's a much greater increase to the operating expenses of the $484,000. The second thing that I look at personally is that when I'm looking at the 136,733 in the fiscal 2026 budget, I also look at the capital expenditures numbers that we have. And even though our goal is for the set-asides right now is to make sure that the funds coming in offset all the funds going out, including those operating expenses. So when I'm looking at that right now, it is not the $318,000 variance. This is where Gary and I can wrestle, or a $233,000 variance in terms of cash in, cash out for fiscal year 26. That 233 is obviously before any amendments to the fires, beach fire as well as for police extra duty. This is it's more of a talking out loud. All right, I'm ready to move on to the revenue lines, if council's ready also.
As far as options to.
Possible options
Possible
for,
options
Oh,
for
can I
that.
ask one quick question
You
before
can do
we
whatever you
this?
want, Iris.
Could you, Sheena, explain again the parking budget and revenues? And, you know, we've gone round and round a bunch of times about where the fees are for Park Mobile.
Okay.
And the numbers are different. I feel like you've shifted the pots a little bit, which is fine. I just have lost the bubble.
Okay, Park Mobile fees. There aren't any. We do not get charged them. We found that out.
Right. But I guess what I'm looking at is when you look at the lines, you know, there's a lot of variances back and forth between the various numbers, and that's why I just was confused.
Okay,
Between, you know, daily and seasonal and
all right,
parking meters and what's what, and then that's,
the seasonal is the hang tags.
okay.
This past year, there were about 70 fewer hang tags that were purchased than the prior year. There was one fewer resident tag purchased. I think that was Dale Cook because he left. Because he always purchased one. There were 8 fewer business or, of the $200, the business or employee tags purchased. There were 63 fewer what I call local tags, the $300 tags. With our price going up in Rehoboth, the locals had to choose who they were buying. They obviously chose Rehoboth.
but we made up for it in.
We made up because the way people chose to, the patterns changed. People were buying more, paying more hourly than they were buying daily.
So parking meters, does that include the Park Mobile hourly? That's everything hourly?
Everything hourly.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand, because I was
Yeah.
like, we don't have that many parking meters to have that.
No, there's only-
So
we only have
the
28
deal is that
parking
people
meters.
just buy the day pass like from town hall or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
they can buy
So-
day passes through town hall, they can buy it at the kiosk, or they can go through Park Mobile and purchase a day pass.
Would it be less confusing if we renamed it hourly?
All those sources?
Yes.
Yes.
I can get,
No, I'm
Yeah,
just
I
asking.
think that
was-
It includes
yes.
all those sources. Okay.
I can download from Park Mobile, and anything that was exactly, the daily amount is, I think, $30. That I put into daily. Anything I got from the kiosk numbers, that was 30, went in there. Of course, anything that they bought at the front office, I put in there. Everything else, if it was the amount for the weekend or the week, went into daily also. The amount for daily, weekend, or went daily. Everything else was meters. And I could tell you how many hours people bought.
So is weekend, so where's the weekend?
And that falls under daily.
Under daily, okay.
Weekend, week, and a day fall under daily. Everything, and if it's not a hang tag, falls under meters.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry to back everything up.
Can you just change the name on that in the future, just put hourly versus parking meters?
Certainly.
Okay. All right.
That's a good idea.
Any other questions before we move into the next?
So
What
overall
is our,
parking
it's not a question, just what is our plan? What are we-
Overall parking revenues.
Well, you know, there's a few, like, as we went through the operating expenditures, there's nothing that really came out as major changes that we're gonna look at for the 2026 budget. The only thing that does come to mind is, you know, whether it is 2 cars or 1 car from a police standpoint, but that just changes our capital expenditures number, and then we can have that conversation. But from an operating expense standpoint.
Make it grand.
How are we gonna balance the budget to this number? So if there's a gap of 318,
Is that what we're
where
trying
Are
to,
we doing that now?
is that what we're
or-
trying to solve is 318,000?
Yeah, that's the question.
I would assume we could do it now.
No, I'm just asking, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping that we could do so
That's
that
fine.
the budget can go back in under a balanced review.
So 318,000 is what we're trying to.
Did you
yeah.
want to look at expenses or revenue, change options?
Was that, and you had changed some stuff since what we have in our, we got before. Are you doing?
It falls to 300, with the allocations, 319,000 that has to be made up.
So I have a question about the overall approach before we go into revenue. I guess what I'm wondering is we're being given a lot of options to increase revenues, but we're not being given any options to try to mitigate the amount of expense.
Okay, that's what I was asking, which did you?
You know, so I'm just, besides increasing basically taxes, whether you call it fee or tax, whatever, it's, kind of the same type of stuff. Besides increasing fees and taxes, I was kind of hoping if we got a gap that we could be presented with things, okay, we could save some money if we did this differently. That's my opinion, I don't know.
So I'd rather do that first.
Yeah, I agree.
So are there elements that you see in the operating expenditures that changes that can make a material adjustment? When I say material, something over $10,000, not $500 here, $500 here, $500 there.
I don't see much that, we went through like beautification, which
I
is,
cut 20,000 from that.
right,
I cut 50,000 from the police when they came into me. I kept parking pretty much where they were. Maintenance, we really didn't increase anything there, with the exception is what's been pointed out, is some of the benefits have gone up. If you start cutting personnel, that's going to affect the way we do business in town and provide services to the public. It is tough to make budget every year without a known amount of money coming in, and of course I'm talking about a property tax. I talked to other folks last night at a Delaware League dinner, and they said, I don't know how you make budget every year without a property tax, but we try our best. If you cut somebody from the front office, you're going to save, with the benefits, about $65,000. If you cut our part-time accounting clerk, we'll save about $33,000. If you cut the assistant to Scott, we'll save, because of his benefits, $98,000. If we cut somebody from parking enforcement, one of our part-time people there that helps Tammy, we'll save $22,000. If we go back to 12 on the police department, we'll save $110,000. And if you cut the assistant town manager, Jim Gede's position, we'd save money there. That's if we cut those positions.
So there's an elephant in the room that I alluded to when we talked about employee benefits costs. And I think what I'm really concerned about is I see us kind of heading towards a wall as a town. And the wall is the town and the public wanted a better run town and better staffing levels. And the two of you and your leadership with the teams, we now have a much better running town. Everyone would agree with that. Our expenses have gone up dramatically. They've gone up everywhere a lot, but public safety in particular is basically double where it was 5 years ago.
It has.
It's doubled, but candidly, we're doing a heck of a lot better job, with public safety. No one's gonna argue, about that point. So we're kind of running into a wall. You talked about the staffing levels. One of the things that we're still doing is I believe we're still doing 100% on employee and family healthcare benefits. And where it really hit me really hard is when you see a department where you've only got 1 or 2 people and you see benefits costs, suddenly the number of what kind of money we're spending really becomes clear. It's kind of an elephant in the room that no one really wants to talk about, but we really got to think in terms of competitiveness and whether this is sustainable for us to do it. And I hate to be the one to bring it up, but I think it's got to at least be discussed.
And it's a good point. I listened to Rehoboth's most recent budget meeting, and their town managers stand up in front of their commissioners and tell them, we have to be competitive with Dewey Beach. Dewey Beach has 100% health benefits. We have to be competitive with the other towns around us. So it's not just here. But I would also say that our employees, as I said earlier, aren't paid the same amount as they are in some of the surrounding beach towns, and we make up for that with our benefits.
So there's also a drag though with benefits, and that's that when, and this is in the private sector, a lot of employers, even if they pay for their employee 100%, they don't necessarily pay for spouse and family 100. And the reason is what they're finding out is that when you pay for the family 100, even if the other person works, a lot of times they just go on your benefit.
Supplementary, yeah.
You know, rather than doing it because it's better for them, right? So we end up not only paying that extra 20%, but the whole thing, because otherwise they would have been on their own benefits with their own job. It's significant. It's not popular with the staff to talk about it.
Right.
You know, when I talk about the brick wall that I see us headed towards, that's also associated towards, you know, you had a bid opening, you know, a week ago, and there's going to be, you know, besides the capital amount, we're most likely going to be borrowing money if we go forward with this. That money's going to have an interest cost and an amortization, okay, and that's going to be multi-six figures, you know, another hole, and that's going to start kind of probably at the end of this coming budget year, although we won't be probably borrowing the money in the front end because we have some of the capital, but it's going to impact future budget years. I'm looking at it, you know, we really need to be frank with ourselves, you know, what can we afford, you know, to do? On the revenue side, I will tell you, I've looked at something, and this is another thing that's probably not very popular to look at, you know, when people say we don't have a property tax, we actually do. It's our sand tax, okay, but it's allocated specifically to the beach. We have a well-funded beach nourishment program now with a fair amount of money in it. And the question that I would look at is, can we use some of that money that's in the beach tax to pay for either the public safety on the beach, the lifeguards? I think we need to talk about whether, and I'm talking about the money coming in, not the money that's already in the account. You know, should we be looking at using that to offset some of the cost of the lifeguards, you know, that's in the town? I think we've got to talk about some of these things rather than just necessarily looking at the revenue and saying, okay, we got to raise parking by $1, we got to raise the licensing fees by this. I think we need to be looking at things that are a little bit more difficult. I'm just being honest.
Well, and, you know, to that point too, you know, the benefits increases, you know, 10%, are they outpacing the pay, and like where does the money go? I mean, I don't know of anybody that really has full benefits paid anymore either. Almost everybody, because of the state of the world, has something. And so, you know, if we look at kind of where those curves go, is there something where if we paid people a little bit more, but then also ask them to pay a portion of the benefits that offset, but maybe in the long run, that could be better,
Could be.
because you just can't keep pace with it.
Right.
This, I mean, I agree with you. There's some real complex issues that are facing us and that we really need to talk about. I don't think we're going to solve the employee benefit issue today. I agree we need to talk about the beach fund and what the potential uses are. I don't think we have any flexibility under the current code and probably charter as well to be able to use that money for anything other than what is stated in the code right now. Either existing money or money that's coming in.
We'll double check with Fred, but I asked him this question a long time ago, and I believe it's actually, we have the ability in the code to do it ourselves without charging. But
I think
whether we should or
yeah.
not go to the public is a different
But
issue.
it's an issue that needs to be addressed. I don't think that, I'm not sure that we can even do it within this budget season. For me, you know, this is the first budget that I've been involved in where we really were presented with a budget that was really so far out of balance. And when I say out of balance, I mean including the set-aside allocations, which we've been doing for a long time. I think we should talk about those set-aside allocations. I mean, it could be that we might come down to a point to say that we can't reduce this any more than, let's say, $100,000 and go back to the town and say, okay, you find a place to save that money. I mean, that's one strategy. I'm not going to say as a town council we should be saying you should cut somebody at administration or cut a police officer or cut a maintenance person. I don't think that's really our function. It's really up to the town manager to make those kinds of decisions. But we could say, you know, here's the constraint that you have to work in. I do want to talk about the set-aside issues, and you know, we do have the upcoming discussion about the cost of the town hall, and that, at least from my perspective, the cost estimates that came in were far beyond any estimate that I had seen or heard publicly discussed. And I'm not sure how that developed, but that's kind of where we are at this point, and it does look like we're going to have some financing. And we're going to have some money for debt service. Again, I think that's why we need to talk about the set aside quite a bit. I think there's a little bit of flexibility there. There may not be as much flexibility as the mayor thinks, but, maybe we'll come out somewhere in the middle. So I would like to have that discussion. Do you want to do that now, or?
Well,
I
yeah,
don't know
I'd
what
like
you're
to just to respond to a few things that have been said. My understanding is that we are, from an employee benefit perspective, we are locked in with our current contract with the state for this year, but we will look at next year going outside of the state's program to be more competitive, potentially.
What I have seen,
Well, you haven't showed anyone else.
okay, yeah, I've gathered, and I will be sharing that with you. I just haven't gotten it over to you.
Because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's nothing, look, the employees deserve employee benefits.
Yeah.
They deserve their health insurance. It's the basis of what we have. But to David's point, it's a significant number now. It's not insignificant. And to say it's 100, and all of us that have been in corporate, we didn't even need to have 100% on individual when we were in corporate. It was maybe 90% if you were lucky on the individual, 80% on dependents, and 60 on spouses, just because of how things generally work. Because we'd even do audits to make sure that the spouse didn't have coverage. But if you have 100%, everyone's just going to check yes, and then we're going to have the full vote the whole time. The set-asides, Gary, from how I'm looking at it, as I said when we started this, is what is our complete cash usage versus the set-asides. Set-asides were a calculation to get there. I believe from the audit perspective, the audits even commented that the set-aside process is antiquated, not necessarily best practices for us to do. I would like for us to contemplate, and even put that on the agenda for the next week's meeting, is the idea of fully funding certain accounts like streets and infrastructure for a period of time versus having the set-asides, and that being done at the beginning of the period versus the end.
Can you help me understand what you're?
Sure. So if we decide that, if we believe that there's 400,000 needed in streets and infrastructure for the next 3 years, that the streets and infrastructure has 400,000 in it to be in, so we have at least 3 years. Now, we're not necessarily taking pieces out
So
as we go.
we're going to fund it based on the capital plan.
The capital plan, correct.
Okay, so you want to basically switch to the whole way we do it. That's
Yeah.
basically what you look at. Look at the capital plan, and then that's the money that gets put aside.
Correct.
But then what happens to the remaining balances in infrastructure?
It could be moved into town hall or into a general fund or another fund that could be used. It could be moved into rainy day to fund the rainy day. It could be moved in
And then what about continuing funding for the streets and infrastructure?
as we need the money. It'll be part of the overall budget. And then we need to put the money into recoup the funds.
But my problem, where is it going to come from? If we don't have any flexibility now, where are we going to, once you start taking these allocations that we've been setting aside into separate accounts, once you absorb those into the general fund and the operating budget, they're gone forever. You're not going to have the flexibility to come back and reinstitute those again.
So if we had $300,000 worth of expenditures associated here over this year or over the next 3 years, and that we need to recoup, it would be part of our budget decision today. So it's not just saying that these set-asides need to be funded here. It's to say that this number plus this funding needs to be what this budget is.
Okay, well, then what happens in the fourth year? That's what I'm saying. The flexibility is not going to be there because
We
you've taken.
continue to move the year out.
Okay, I'm not following. I'm going to have to.
All right, we'll talk about it
Yeah.
offline.
Well, it doesn't have to be offline, but
For us to continue to throw money into streets and infrastructure and it grow up to,
We're at 800,000 right now.
800,000. We're not going to need those funds in the next 3 years. Most of our work has been done through grants.
Maybe. But what if we have a major storm?
It's the same concept that David had in regards to the beach fund. I understand by charter, we've been collecting and putting that money in the beach fund. We now have over $6 million in the beach fund. This past year, the federal government came in and with the Water Act, changed the requirement from 35% at the state level down to 20%. there's less money that's gonna be needed for beach replenishers. As we argued with DelDOT or DenRec this past year, in terms of them thinking about trying to put a contribution, Matt Meyer went in the office saying, we're never gonna charge the beaches for beach replenishment. It's an $8 billion revenue to the state of Delaware, but yet we're handcuffed by having a tax that comes out with 150 and $6 million we can't use.
I understand that, and I don't disagree with that. I think we need to have that conversation about what we do with the beach replenishment fund, and how that's handled. But there's a process for doing that. We need a referendum.
Yes.
And we have to be, it's a very public discussion we have to have about that.
It needs to be done publicly. I
We
agree.
can't
We
just,
are.
you can't just make changes. And we have to have a public discussion about streets and infrastructure. I mean, we did a stormwater management analysis. This goes back now about at least 8 years, I would think. And that report's still around. We were talking about needing millions of dollars to fund all the projects in that plan. Are we setting that aside? Have we decided that there's a whole host of projects in there that aren't worth doing, can't be done, wouldn't be beneficial? I mean, we've never had that discussion. It's just not clear to me that we're coming to any rational decisions about what we really need for streets and infrastructure. Lewis right now is trying to find ways of funding a resiliency fund. Bethany already has one. Fenwick Island is trying to develop one as well. And, the idea there's some things you can do prospectively, things like we're doing with the infrastructure fund that we currently have, that would help to potentially mitigate any effects of storms that are yet to come. But then there would also be money, presumably, with that kind of fund to be able to help us recover from the effects of any storms or, any other kind of catastrophe like that. I mean, we are increasingly seeing events that most people would look at and say, this was unimaginable. And we're seeing that on a more frequent basis. And I just want the town to be prepared for those kinds of events. Maybe it's a combination of infrastructure fund, or maybe it's turning the beach fund into infrastructure, but we need to have that conversation as well.
Question for education for me. What does the rainy day fund do?
The rainy day fund is in case there is some shortfall in revenue or unanticipated expenditures, keeps the town running, keeps the lights on, keeps the people employed. You can begin to use that money, but when you use that money, and there's some criteria for when you should use that money, you have to have a plan for replenishing it. You have to bring it back to that 50% of expenditure requirement. So I think that's different than the resilience fund, if that's kind of the source of the question.
And we also keep, what, a 6-month reserve?
Well, that's the rainy day fund.
So does it have to be 6 months? Can it be 5 months or 4 months?
It's what we determined.
Right.
I mean, one of the things that the auditors have repeatedly complimented us on is not only having a fund balance policy, but
6 months,
following it.
Right. We have a lot of competing priorities, right? I think it's a matter of, we're not going to say infrastructure we need to cut that, or I think we need to take a look at it, like what's the number one thing that we need to accomplish now? That might be the town hall revenue. What's the number two? What's the number three? And let's prioritize them some way, and I think we'll get we're challenging some of the, assumptions that we've made in the past. Let's challenge them. Now's the time to do it. If we're not going to do it now, we're never going to do it.
Can we talk a little bit about the specifics of the set-asides? The current structure we set up about 5 years ago. And seeing if you've been here 7, you actually were here, but you probably weren't as involved as you are now. There was some old accounts we've been putting money into. We've been putting, I think, 5% of transfer tax into something called the Transfer Tax Recoupment Fund. I'm not sure that anybody really knew what that was or why it was established. We were putting, I think, 3% of transfer tax into comprehensive development plan, a comprehensive development plan account to help cover expenses of developing the comprehensive plan. And then we were putting, I think, another 3 or 5% of not building permits, of seasonal parking, 5% of seasonal parking into something called streets and striping. So, no one had a good idea of how those accounts should be used, so we reorganized them into the current structure that we have now. And there is a vote to back up each of these. I would suggest, that in terms of what's going from the transfer tax to streets and infrastructure, and transfer tax, or daily and seasonal parking to streets and infrastructure, I would suggest that we could absorb both of those into the general fund, which would pick up about $62,500. What we are taking from transfer tax, the 5% contribution of transfer tax to the rainy day fund, I really think needs to be continued, because again, as the budget goes up, you need some protection for the following year. You need some additional money available so that you can cover the increased requirements for the rainy day fund, because you increase the budget for next year. When we approved the hotel tax, it was not something that was universally endorsed by everyone involved, by all the stakeholders. And, we had a lot of discussion about that, and we thought that it was a good idea, particularly since we didn't have a solid capital improvement fund at that time, to take half of that hotel tax and put that towards capital improvements. Now, we modified that somewhat over the last couple of years, and instead of putting it into a general capital improvement fund, we put it into capital improvement fund for the town hall, which I think makes perfectly good sense. It seems, if nothing else, the appearance of backing away from that contribution this coming year, when we're faced with a multi-million-dollar cost of a new town hall, to back away from any contribution to that capital improvement fund for the town hall just doesn't make sense to me. And once we have figured out exactly how we would finance it, I think that 50% of the hotel tax is a ready source of money for debt service.
Right.
And, I think we need to.
That would cover a $3 million loan.
That's a good point. Right. So so again, I think there are a couple of funds we could give up and fold those into to the general fund, or into the operating budget. I think we still have some discussion about what we do with streets and infrastructure, because I'm not
streets and
sold on it
infrastructure,
yet.
I'll kind of give you my opinion. It's that I know you've laid out, some capital needs over the years and whatnot, and I think the thinking has always been that we know it's somewhat limited how much money we have, and trying to make sure we don't get it all spent. I think there actually is a lot of unmet streets and infrastructure need in town, basically having to do with water and drainage, everywhere. And thankfully we got nice grants to help us, in one specific area. We got some people clamoring in the north end because the rainwater and overwash and all of that, and you started to do one street, the people on the next block are now saying, ours is just as bad, hey, what about us? So there's a lot of unmet need that's kind of been constrained by the money not being, people knowing that there's only a finite amount of money. And I'm just leery of downsizing it significantly, because I could see us kind of being in a situation in years forward where when we have these things, hey, we really got to do something about this, that we just don't have much money to be able to pay for it. I do have that concern, because I think there's some pretty serious unmet need in the town, mostly in the downtown low-lying areas. That's, there.
So let's agree to, obviously, this is as a discussion point. But if we're not looking from a set-asides, if I heard you, Gary, right, I think your point on town hall and the hotel tax is perfect in the sense that keeping that in place for the future debt service that we were going to need. The streets and infrastructure, we can continue to maintain that from the building permits, which is codified, I believe, on that, the 20%. And we can continue and really take a closer look at what expenditures have we had, whether it's the replacement of the storm drains. We know that we're looking in the future of a new pumping station on Reed Street, most of that being covered with the Army Corps that's coming up. But if we can agree to absorb the transfer tax 3% and daily parking 5%, that's $62,500 that we don't have to look for. And if we increase the beach fires and the police special by the $15,000 and $25,000, then we have a $210,000 variance that we're searching for right now before we go in. I don't see any other, the benefits is a conversation.
So let me ask you a question. The employee selected benefit year probably late in the year that starts January 1, is that how they do it? Or-
July to June.
So they select in July and it goes
Well,
through June?
they have to they select in March, the state year goes July to June. If we were to opt out, we have to let them know by March 1st.
As in 40 days?
Yes, sir.
Talking about open season.
So,
Yeah.
so the question I think we need to start having the conversation today is, should we look, in my opinion, about saying that, starting the next plan year, that there's gonna be potentially some family sharing of benefit costs?
Now, we still pay, if you would like to change, that is your decision. The state doesn't care what the employees pay. You would just have to let me know so I can let the employees know. And
Well, there's two parts to that. One is I'd like for us to, as a town, to get a competitive bid process, to have a broker come in, to put in plans that are comparable and give us the options that we can look at that's not the state plan. That's the first thing.
I've got one, I've got like 3 others. I think I've got 3. I'll let you know what I've got out there.
Okay, because that's the first thing, because then we'd have, if we did find a competing plan that would reduce our benefits costs, there's a possibility.
One is the state plan, one thing.
I think the 3 that I've got don't have lower pricing. The problem is we're
Gold,
small.
bronze, silver, high deductible, HSA, all
Yeah.
this other stuff that completely changes. I mean, my menu at my last
Did
job.
you hear Iris's question? Are there multiple plans at the state level, like gold, platinum, silver?
I think we have the top, but the problem with going with outside of the state with the ones that I've got is we're small. That's why the pricing is, I will find out what the prices are at different levels within the state.
So does the state have multiple options?
Yes.
For that?
I do believe
And
they
we
do.
have the top option right
I do believe we do. But I will find out that tomorrow.
So can you publish that for everyone to take a look at what we currently have?
Yes.
Because again, corporations I've been for, you may get the silver and you can buy up to gold.
Right.
So.
So when we're talking about through the state, my insurance stuff is, I mostly know Pennsylvania, so you'll help me out with this. In Pennsylvania, there's an exchange, and you can buy on the exchange, or you can go outside of the exchange and buy privately. So Independence Blue Cross Silver, for example, has one price on the exchange, and that's if you get money back from the federal government, and one price not on the exchange. I just figured that out this year, and my premiums went down. I'm a family of 3 with no employer. My premiums went down just under $1,000 a month from last year to this year by going off the exchange. Do we have that kind of thing in Delaware? Or is that state versus getting broker? Because I end up going to a broker.
Elizabeth, I believe it's
Yeah.
going to be very similar to the other states in which you have the exchange that you can go on if your employer does not have benefits or you're an individual that you can go into the Delaware marketplace. Otherwise, by what's published is small group, and small group rates are pretty much the same regardless. Like if you have less than 50 employees or you're not, it's here's your rate, here's the family rate for this plan. And a broker can basically come back and say, here are the carriers, here are the plans, here are the deductibles, here's your HSA rate, and you pick which one or guide you to that.
So let me suggest what I'd like us to see. I'd like us to see whether it's a combination of with the state and with outside the state, what our options are in terms of the overall cost of coverage, in terms of not necessarily providing platinum versus gold versus silver. I'd like us to know those options. And then when you price out those options, if people continued on the 100% funding, what the impact is on the budget. But then I'd also like you to do a budgetary impact of if we start having some family members not have a 100% subsidized thing, where might personally leave the employee at 100 and potentially family members don't get 100% coverage necessarily, and what the budgetary impact of that would be. And I think we need to look at that and potentially make some decisions. The plan year starts July 1.
Now we have to put in to the FOP.
Well, so the police are on a contract for 3 years, so that's gonna stay. It would be all the other employees that we have
And
would drop.
that collective bargaining agreement had substantially similar benefits.
Yeah, and when you hear other towns talk about their budgets and you go online and you watch them, that's one of the things the town managers are wrestling with, because their police, when they negotiate, whether it's Teamsters or FOP, they're at 100%. But the rest of the employees at town are not, and whatever it is. I would just say that our employees are not paid the same amounts as the surrounding towns, beach towns. To live here and to work here costs a lot of money. We're not talking about corporate type of jobs. We're talking about, people doing maintenance and running the town. And I think that by significantly changing the benefits, we will lose employees. Maybe if we just change it for the family members, maybe we won't. But I feel that it's a benefit that keeps our employees here. And I feel, the town paying very little tax, whether you want to call the beach tax a tax or not, but the average, I think, is $111 people are paying a year. You own $1 million home here and you have parking in your driveway, you are paying $110 a year to live in Dewey Beach, not counting the county tax and the school tax. So I think it's a great place to live, and you're making out very well as a property owner here. Most of the increases that would be suggested to make up the difference are really going to be for our visitors. Really, they're going to be maybe raising parking to $3.75 or $4 an hour, taking the fines for not paying your tickets from $40 to $60. Raising building permits from 3% to 4%. That right there would bring in almost $200,000 if we went from 3% to 4% on building permits. Not everybody would be affected in town, just the people that are doing projects on their homes would be affected on that. So I kind of throw those things out there. Nobody likes taxes. Nobody wants to throw a lot of taxes on our citizens, but to live in Dewey Beach is a pretty good deal.
So what I'm asking for, and I think my commissioners all want, is we want the information so we can make the decision.
Sure.
I get your point.
But they're
I
two
think we
separate
need to have
things.
I think we need to have the information.
Sure.
That's not a problem. I will definitely get that for you. And I will also send you over the staffing plan, because I do have it. It's buried somewhere.
Okay, but they are, I just want to say, Bill, they're two separate things. David's absolutely correct. We're up against the wall. The payroll hasn't gone up. The payroll's gone up. The benefits go up. The employer portion of taxes have gone up. And that's not to say that the town isn't happy where the services are. The town is better than it's ever been. It takes money, but there are options. If somebody has to come out of pocket $200 a month for their spouse's employee benefits, it's not really $200 because it's a pre-tax dollar. So it's that they're not going to be paying taxes on. So it's not a full hit to them. We need to, and you and I have talked about this before, we need to look at the benefits and just as our own plan. We need to look at the tiers. We need to figure out what's best for the employee and for the town and have a balance there.
But we did save money one way. The new state family medical plan, we went third party, and so we didn't have to start taking out this year, and we will be at a lower rate than the state plan. So.
And that may be the same thing with when you get into the employee benefits. You end up,
Right.
the pooled event that we're going into right now with the state is just we have the same experience rating as the worst possible town in town, in the state. So, we'll take a look at that.
I got a question. While we're looking at cost, the beach fund, we've been collecting for 30 some odd years. And I don't, obviously we don't want to use what people have given us because that was the intention of that money, but over 30 years, we've accrued a lot of interest on that. Is there a way we can figure out how much interest we have earned on that tax?
We talked about that.
We did?
Scott.
Okay.
Interest isn't that
Gary.
much. It's because it's an investment. And at one point, a year and a half or so ago, we actually didn't make as much, or we actually lost a little bit just for a second. And then I think at that time, the investment committee decided that we should put it into more secure funds.
Right.
No
Right?
exposure.
Because if we're going to borrow money at 4 or 5%. Are we making 4 or 5% on what we have?
That was the short-term income fund.
Right.
Which is part of the rainy day fund.
Right.
Okay.
There's a little more flexibility with respect to the beach fund. There is some equity investment there, but, I mean, I looked at some of the numbers too. There's not a lot to be gained if you start taking out interest and dividends. Then you
Right.
reduce the overall value of the investment, if you start doing that. But it just hasn't been a lot of money there.
Commissioner Bauer,
Yes.
in 2015, they moved to Brown Advisory. Okay? In the past 9 years, it has gone up $5.7 million. We have put in an additional, of that, 2.1 million has come from money that we have put in from beach town. So it's only been an additional 3.6 million that has been grown in that time.
So that 3.6 million would cover some of the, I guess, the gap that we have in our new building,
I
if
think
we had to.
Yeah, but I think the point is, by code, are we allowed,
Right.
does the code define the gains in the beach fund as to
doesn't
have to
address
stay
it.
within the beach fund, or can that be used for general operating?
So I looked at this a while ago, and Fred did it. I believe how we spend the money in it is actually by code, not by charter, how we spend the money. But there's more of a philosophical question with the town citizens approved this
Right.
as a beach reserve, and it was kind of approved by referendum, I think, if I'm not
was.
mistaken, back in the day. And so I think we want to be really careful about what we do going forward, with it, given how it was initially approved. That being said, the reason why I kind of mentioned the lifeguards is that's still beach, and we're not talking about with the lifeguard funding, given our fund balance, the interest on that almost covers the cost of the lifeguards for a year, and I'm just kind of wondering with 6 million in it, do we really need to focus on growing that, or do we just want to focus on protecting it?
Again, I think it's questionable. I mean, I think it's a legal question, what we can do with existing contributions as well as future contributions. And again, if we were going to do something different, we should go ahead and go through the process and do that. If it needs a referendum, we should do that. But I don't want to go through the process of making a decision. Let's say we make a decision that we're going to do something different with future contributions, and then have somebody challenge that legally. That just causes a big mess. I don't really want to get into that.
Yeah, I'll bring it up. I mean, just a thought. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to take any of the money that was put in there from someone's pocket to it, but
Leave the principal alone.
leave the principal alone, but what we've earned in addition to that over, especially now if the state's gonna, not have as much contribution, they're not gonna be hitting us, and, federal's gonna be picking up that portion. I think we're safer today than we've ever been of not needing that money, but.
It seems there's gray areas too, like, I mean, like Todd was talking about, the lifeguards are going and they're cleaning up the beach and they're, getting the dead animals and stuff like that, so, does the ATV and stuff like that, is there a component of that? Because that's certainly keeping the beach safe and nice.
As long as the public knows what we're doing, and that's why we're discussing it publicly, so I don't want to do it behind anybody's back. Good question for Fred.
All right. So now we're at revenue. Jim, did you want to make a comment? I saw you raise your hand before. And normally I don't allow
Yes,
public, but
I'm with-
I know you too well.
I'm Jim Deegan, live on Hayden Road. I'm concerned with infrastructure. We still not fixed that Reed Street thing. In the middle of July, in no tidal way, I'm negotiating the price of my appraised house, saying, who wants to pay this much money if you can't even get to the house because the street's flooded? And this is like in the middle of July. And so there was, I'm with Gary about saving money for infrastructure. We got a lot of infrastructure issues that I don't see being addressed.
We've taken that off from the conversation. I did throw it out there as a cap. That obviously was not well-liked, so we'll look at that in the future. But we need to go back to that plan and look at what the long-term plan. But as I said, We do know that Bill and I have met with the Army Corps of Engineers. There's a plan for them to put a pumping station at the end of Reed, at the end of Reed in the future to help out with some of that flooding. And you also get flooding from the other side, which is, I assume, from from the Hayden Park. Whatever. Yes?
You have a comment on Zoom.
You mean I just opened the can? Thanks, Jim.
Potentially.
Sorry. Sure.
I don't have a mic, so you're gonna have to tell me to speak.
Is there somebody on Zoom that would like to give us a comment?
Yep, David Moskowitz, Dewey Beach. Just real quick, you're talking with the beach replenishment. You're talking about next week's agenda item today without notice to the public. That said, in the past, there's been schemes to get the beach money. You cannot take the gains and use it for other purposes. They looked at it in the past. And then last year at this time, it looked like every penny would be needed to use the beach money for the state's new policy. There was an election, as the mayor alluded to, and there's a new governor, but 4 years later, there's a new election, and the new governor could again try to get it from Dewey Beach. So that's why that money's there and needs to grow, because if you look at all the money, it'd only pay for maybe 2 or 3 beach replenishments. It wouldn't pay for much more. And we need one every about 3 years. That said, with the budget, just some quick questions. Is the new paid family leave tax implemented? Because that's as of January 1st. So I'm not sure, I didn't see a separate line item. And then the state website shows 4 different health insurance options. So that's one thing to be, they offer 4 different options, not very big difference between them. But if you look, the difference between an employee and family is about $1,700 a month. And then I think people have forgot, but around 2016, 2017, the town actually instituted a new plan where it would be 90% town, 10% employee. And then for their family, it would actually be 80% town, 20% employee. And the town manager at the time didn't codify it. And then when he switched over, it was remembered by Dale Cook, but then forgotten at some point. But it used to be actually 90% town for individuals and 80% for families. So that's just some numbers that were historic. Thanks.
So we're on to the.
Yeah. All right. Back to the original point. We're going to look at the employee benefits. We're going to look at other carriers. We're going to look at the tiers, but that does not going to stop us from seeing if we can identify $210,000 worth of changes within the revenue makeup.
We're looking at revenue now.
Yeah. All right. So.
You wanna bring your revenue?
It's up.
Is it up there?
Yes,
So,
sir.
all right.
Oh,
So going from top to bottom, there's nothing we can do in transfer tax. There's nothing we can do in the hotel, cable, and beach concession tax, as well as the accommodation tax. Those are all codified. It gets down into the license permanent fees. The first item is looking at the rental licenses. To give you a background right now, for the fiscal 25 rates, if you rent your house out and it's up to 2-bedroom house,
yes, sir.
you pay $188 for that rental license, plus you pay your 3% at the end of the year. If you have I don't remember what number this is, but if you have a more than 8-room house, Kate, is it? You pay $308 for that rental license on and on. So there's an element of if we were to increase those rates, is the first element that Gina's put forth to us to basically fill that gap. If we were to look at the maximum amount that she had out here, which is a 40% increase, it'd go from 188 on the base level to 264, and go 308 on the base level to 432. Again, that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but that's 52,000 or 1/4 of what is just from that license perspective. So I'll throw it out. Any conversation around that?
So when I look at these, when you raise fees, I think it creates a hardship if you go too excessive on it. So small changes over a period of time, you phase things in. If we just took the first or second item, like the rental licenses, it's 6.75 or 13. If you did, commercial licenses, the same thing, option 1 or 2. Just go straight down. I think that covers it. More than covers it, actually. So
If you did 13% on commercial and rental, you're only at a total of $56,000.
yeah, without taking the extending the season, I think that's a third rail issue for everybody. Plus, it's tough to find staff to do the extra time as well.
I'd rather kind of talk about all these in context, like not individually, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you got to think, okay, what, money we need and whatnot. I mean, the one to me that seems like kind of a no-brainer is the parking tickets going to $60.
Yes.
Right.
That to me seems like it's a
Fair.
no-brainer, and that knocks $100,000 off the problem. Although you may get fewer tickets when they're 60 versus 30. So it may be more
And from my perspective, David, I look at the fact that from accommodation, we're lower than every other community around us by far.
Yeah.
We're at 3%, every other community's at 6 and 7%.
An 8.
And 8.
Right.
And we can't do anything about it because unless we went to referendum. But we could change the fee structure for your rental license. And again, it's not a material amount, but
The pushback you're going to get is because they're now going to be faced with the state tax.
and that same thing with the other communities, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other communities too, but that's going to be the pushback.
That is a pass-through. As we found out this past month with the VRBO issues, they're passing it through to the renter.
So you're suggesting we do the maximum of 40.5%? Is that your?
I would be in favor of moving it towards the higher amount. Again, we're talking about at the highest level, or at the base level, going from $188 to $264, which is a majority of the people that have a home. Actually, if you look at the 3 top rates that we have right now are the 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, if you hear me out on this. And that's 188, 203, 218. At 218 right now, it would go to 306. That's not a big number, but that would change us. That would get us to around $40,000 increase.
Let me offer you guys a little bit of my thoughts on this. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we're talking about rental license increase rather than accommodations tax is the ease of doing it versus charter change or referendum are only 2 ways to do an increase in the accommodations tax. When I look at it, you've got 2 extremes of people who rent their property. You've got the person with a little 1-bedroom condo who owned it for a while, they just rent it out a few weeks in the summer to basically pay their expenses for the year because they've owned it forever, and that's just the way they do it. As a percentage of their revenue, they're paying a huge amount of money. And then you've got the person with, the mega mansion that they rent out for, 10, 20 grand a week and rent it, May through September. And this is just a rounding error in terms of the accommodations tax they're paying. So I think that the license should be the license and the tax should be the tax. And when you start doing a flat fee on people who don't rent very much of a small place just to kind of help pay the bills, they're paying a disproportionate share. That's kind of my view.
So that 1 bedroom, how much is it?
Right now, 188.
And it would go to what?
It's actually up to a 2-bedroom.
Okay.
264.
So 188 would go to 260, which would be $80.
Yeah, so.
It's a rounding error, even for a 1-bedroom.
Well, I mean, my point is there are some people who just rent out their property.
Understood.
Rent another week.
What's that?
Rent another week.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, 40% increase to me just seems huge. Really.
Yeah, that's why I like the smaller ones.
Graduate it so that it's, for the number of bedrooms, so it's not like this, it looks like it's linear, but as you said, that you can rent for so much more if you have that bigger house. So could that, per bedroom for, if you have, I don't know, more than 4 bedrooms, does
There's already a
that
fee for the
go
license for the
higher?
extra bedroom.
Yeah.
There's already a fee in the licensing structure for extra bedrooms. on
No,
the
I know, but I'm saying, could it be,
150, 190.
could it's going up linearly, could it go up
200.
higher?
Increase the per bedroom fee is what you're saying.
It
For
does.
four bedrooms and above, say for
Right.
5, because that's what we're talking about, is the
Okay.
new big houses that get the huge weekly rents.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a similar question, about the business licenses too. When I bought my house in 2009, everything was closed in the winter except for, Woody's and I guess Hammerheads, and now everything's open all year, but they're still paying the same tax for operating. They're making more money, all year round, and again, none of this stuff is popular, but we gotta look at all the different little levers, I think, to.
What are the competitive parking rates for us in the other towns now?
So Rehoboth's at 4, Bethany's at 3, but they're gonna raise theirs to 350. I talked to their finance person last night. Lewis is much lower. They're at $2. I'm not sure what Fenwick Island is, but Rehoboth's not gonna raise theirs. They're gonna stay at 4.
Therefore, we're at 350?
We're at 350.
So to Commissioner Jazinski's point, rental license increases impact the residents of the town. Parking meter increases impact visitors, as does parking tickets could be, sometimes we park wrong. So that's another thing to think about, is who we're impacting by our increases, so we don't hit all the same. As I agree that the parking ticket, $60 is a no-brainer.
I don't think the meter rate increased 50 cents to 4. I don't really have a lot of heartburn with that.
Agreed.
I don't either with those two.
And that takes, if we just do those two, that takes us over.
It takes us to 250.
Right. So I was just checking, so I'd like the 13% on the rental license. So that gets it 17, and then 13% on the commercial license, that gets us 39. And then going to $4 from 350 gets us 147. And then the 97 from the parking tickets.
We're getting close to 301.
And then, even if we don't want to go to 4 on the increased building fees, we can go to 3.5.
We're
Three,
still at
3.5.
3, we're still at the high, we're at the
Where
high
do-
mark of all the other towns.
That's how it looks like.
Yeah.
So the other towns are at 3, but when you look at the way South Bethany and Bethany, and even Rehoboth has a lot of additional fees as you go through. South Bethany and Bethany Beach, actually, you pay 3%, but then you also pay by the square footage of your project. And if you need more information, if Dawn is still on, I don't know if she is or not.
Yes.
I had Dawn research that today to kind of tell you how at 3%, we're losing money compared to the other towns. And she can explain that if you want the time to hear why we're losing the money.
I'd like to understand that.
I
don't understand this.
Oh, yeah. So it's up to you, Mayor, if you want to have Dawn
Fine.
explain
Yep.
it.
Good evening.
Hello.
South Bethany and Bethany Beach have minimum percentages on their building permits, but they use also the International Code Council valuation data table, which changes periodically. I don't know if it changes yearly or what, but that data table has a multiplier, and all of that multiplier and so forth is based on the actual square footage of the project that they wish to build. And it could be a greater percentage for a full single family home as opposed to a deck, something of that nature. I have been told that basically what that helps to do is, because the towns have been given the physical plans in front of them, then it can be calculated, this actual square footage of the project, the kind of project, the use for the project, and then based on the use, the percentage is calculated. It keeps everybody honest. With us, we have a straight 3% of the total cost of materials plus labor. Many times those figures are not actually the actual costs and so forth. Many times the labor is stated that I will be doing my own construction, So therefore, we do not have any costs for the labor if someone states that they, the homeowner, are going to do it all. And also with that, we currently do have, when a project is finished, what's called a final cost analysis of the project. So if, let's say, the property owner or the contractor said the cost of construction was $100,000, but by the end of the project, it was really $150,000. So then we do tax or put the 3% fee on the difference, the $50,000. However, all of this is based on an honor system. I've been told that by going through the actual square footage and the valuation table, that keeps everybody open and above board, because you cannot deny what has been submitted in a set of blueprints and the use for those.
So I just want to clarify. So what you're basically saying is we take the permit applicant basically says, this is my materials and labor costs, and we issue 3% on that. And what Bethany does is they look at a International Building Code service that says a 500 square foot deck costs this much money, and you pay the 3% on what the International Building Estimators say that improvement costs. Is that basically what you're saying?
Roughly, yes. I don't think I have explained it a 1000% accurate. I could get you additional information on that so that you do have greater details, but I have been told by several sources that we as a town, by doing a straight percentage fee, that we are losing money. How accurate that is, I do not know, but I would have to look into that further to be able to give you greater details.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked about enough options here to more than close the gap, I think. I guess what I would like to see is if, for our next discussion of this, if we could see a revised operating budget with the adjustments that we've talked about already, so we can clearly know exactly what the gap is, and then have a series of options that we can choose from for how to close that. Does that make
But
sense?
do you not think that there's some things, Gary, that, like, we've talked about the beach fires, we've talked about the special extra duty for the police. There's certain things like the increase of the parking, I don't think or the parking tickets, as we talked about, is somewhat of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if we want to make some decisions on some of that's fine. I mean, we can decide to close the whole gap now, I mean, if we want.
Well, we don't have a discuss and vote, right? But we're giving guidance.
We're getting a sense of.
Right. What are you gonna discuss?
There's no
Right.
vote on this.
Right.
But I mean, if we want to put, increased parking tickets on the table, or,
And the parking meter increase?
we can go with that, and we've more than closed the gap at that
Right.
point.
Right.
Without touching rental licenses or commercial licenses.
Mayor, could I make a comment? I mean, our police department budget is more than half of our total budget, and the reason we have that is because of our restaurant and our active nightlife. So I just bring that, we all know that, and I think that was a point made a little earlier.
Well, I mean, if we do a range of options, we don't have to go to $4, we could go to $3.75. I mean, Sheena has some numbers for that. That would still keep us below Rehoboth, if we decided to do that, and fill in with some additional increases on rental licenses and commercial licenses. But, I just think we need to have a little more discussion about what options we think are best, and then make some decisions from there.
Or can we increase them by different percentages, the rental versus commercial?
Sure, why not? The commercial's a bigger base anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's right.
Yeah. All right, so when we come to the next meeting, we're gonna make the changes to the bonfires, to police special, increase in parking tickets, parking meters to 4.
Look at 375 and 4. Where if you just,
Just having fun.
I don't
mean,
feel strong about it anyway.
Me either.
I mean, I don't think people are gonna.
I don't think a quarter or
They're
50
going
cents
to
makes
park
a
it,
difference
they're
whether
gonna
you're gonna
park
park.
it. There's people
There's
that
some
park
wiggle
at
room for
$4
next year
a day.
too, right? I mean, don't,
Now, the other thing, whenever we move the 4 an hour, how does that interfere with the daily parking rate? Is it cheaper to park by the hour? Or?
That's a change. It depends
Right.
on, this is all assuming that the parking patterns stay the same.
Well, I think we should look at that, though. We should look at the daily rate and, yeah. 3-day rate, weekend rate, I forget what the various options are.
I think we're at $30 for the day.
We are.
Or
Yeah.
30, yeah.
So that would be $4 an hour. Just
8
under
8
$8
hours would be 32.
Yeah.
And our meters run from 10 to,
1 AM except for Monday nights, it's free from 5 to
big daily 35.
So council, as we asked Sheena to do this, would you prefer that you bring the budget to us with a 25 or 50 cent increase on the parking meter for right now? The 25 with those, will get us to a balanced budget.
So, the mayor, I mean, we hopefully will be building a new town hall and paramedic station. We are going to need additional revenue in the future, and I agree with Commissioner Persinger on the hotel tax. Half of it should still go.
Agreed.
Because if we do have to borrow, as you said, $3 million, it almost covers that.
Agreed. And build the budget based on $4,
Okay.
at least.
And leave the building permit fees alone for now as
Yeah.
as a potential future source of revenue? I mean, that's a sizable number there. I had no idea.
Well,
we were
for our
talking
next
about that.
meeting, why don't
I
we
had no
have a
idea.
discuss and vote on that?
That's, it's a
We're
full
gonna put it
third
away.
increase.
Yeah.
Correct. Revenue that we're getting, yeah.
And I think what Mr. Zolper is also commenting on is the fact that, for the restaurants here in town, which is, if we didn't, no offense, I went out there, if we didn't rent and we didn't have any restaurants, we'd be a sleepy little beach town. We wouldn't need the police force that we have. Right now, at the $10 rate that most of the restaurants are paying, all the restaurants are paying on a per seat level, it's only $80,000 a year that we take in. So when we think about all the restaurants that are here in town, we take in 80.
Pays for one officer, maybe,
Basically,
almost.
yeah. And that's, so something to consider. All right? Any other comments for the town council, or for the town so that they can start to amend the budget? Iris?
Anybody from the budget committee?
No, don't ask them about that. All right. Are you guys good?
Yeah, I think the capital expenses that we discussed and talked about, I think they're pretty solid, including the projects that we have on infrastructure that I looked at for the next 3 years, including Reed Street, Van Dyke Street, Jersey Street, and I think some paving projects. And we will continue to put in for CTF funding for those paving projects. Just like the police department puts in for grants, the town's going to continue to push for grants, and hopefully we get those to make up some of the difference.
I think Jim has a comment back there.
Is there, how about the bubbling up at McKinley? Is that being addressed?
So the Center of the Inland Bays has a $550,000 project that they're working from McKinley Street all the way around to Bay Resort. Part of it, the first phase is actually going to the wetland area there and redoing the swales so the water will run out, hopefully down McKinley and out into the bay instead of running down the street that's between
Hayden?
Yeah, Hayden, down towards Reed. And then part of that also is to build a slight berm on the south side of that wetland area where your location is. That's all part of their plan. I was gonna ask in February that they come in and do an update on that.
Yeah. Well, last time you presented that, it was like the town had to commit like $350,000.
They've been asking me for $350,000 for the plan, for that. They haven't asked for that amount.
Jim, when was it that they had for the 350 number that you're thinking of?
They presented the plan before, and then what number did he propose that the town, it was significant that the town had to submit in order for this plan to work. They were gonna do 2 lines down where the, 2 lines between the Lions Club and myself, that were gonna do that. And I thought there was I swear the town had a commitment to fulfill in order for that whole process to work.
Well, we're gonna take as Gary brought this up before, we're gonna take a closer look at that long-term plan on streets and infrastructure, and we'll incorporate that into it so that we know that we're planning for the future, not just stealing for the future. All right. All right, good conversation. Any other commissioner comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn? May I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.